Hello and welcome to another episode of the Doing the Rounds podcast with me, Josh Faulkner. I hope you're all keeping safe and well, and thank you to all those that reached out with words of praise following my exclusive interview with Premier Promotions matchmaker and promoter John Fremantle last week. If you missed that chat, go back and listen to it. It's in the archives. You can also listen in on the conversations I've had with Johnny Kidd, Mal Sanders, and many others. My guest this week is Mal Mason, who this year celebrates 50 years in the professional wrestling business. Mal is commonly known as one of the finest referees to come out of Great Britain. We talk all things from Mal's beginnings to refereeing as part of ITV's World of Sport, going to referee the German tournaments, and what Mal finds himself doing in the wrestling business these days. This is a great chat to be enjoyed by fans and wrestlers alike. Before we get to our conversation this week, this podcast comes to you every Monday on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Please take a second to rate, review, and subscribe. Also, tell a friend. Let them know what we're doing over here. I want the stories of my guests to go far and wide. So, with that said, sit back and enjoy as Mal Mason does the rounds with Josh Faulkner.
Round one.
My first question for you, Mal, is how are you?
How am I? I'm fine. It's in my ninth week of this coronavirus lockdown.
Yes.
I haven't found it a problem, to be honest with you. A lot of people would probably feel caged up, but at the back of my mind would be three problems that I have in my life, namely the heart failure, COPD, and terminal cancer. Obviously, I'm quite happy where I am, thanks. I don't want any of that corona to add to my miseries, you know.
Well, that's good to hear, Mal. That's good to hear.
It hasn't been a bother to me. I've utilised the time in doing those little jobs that you say, I must do that.
So, Mal, what we're going to do over the course of this interview is talk about your time in the world of wrestling. Is you've been around for some time, and some time is definitely an understatement. So if we go back to the beginning, Mal, what's the first memory you have of seeing wrestling?
Well, the first memory I have of seeing wrestling was going with my dad to Liverpool Stadium as a kid. You know, I don't know, maybe 11, 12. My dad used to take me on a Friday night to Liverpool Stadium to see the great of the day, like Jack Pye and Alan Garfield, Jim Hussey, who's Rollerball Rocco's father.
Yes.
I was very pleased to meet Jim in his later years. That was my first time of sort of introduction to wrestling. I think then I became a fan because I think up till then I wasn't really watching it on TV, you know. But once my dad started taking me to the live shows, Saturday afternoon, 4 o'clock became a habit. That's when I wasn't kicking a football around somewhere, you know, in the winter time. Obviously, I played football.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be around because everything in those days was a 3 o'clock kickoff. There's none of this, you know, 5 past 4s and 12:30s and so on. Everything kicked off at 3 o'clock in those days, you know. So that would not enable me to see the wrestling on telly, and we didn't have the recording facilities in those days that we have got today, so I used to miss a fair amount of it in the winter, you know, winter time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So when you were going along to the Liverpool Stadium, Mal, and after you went to your first show, did it then become a regular thing for you when you'd go so often to the stadium?
When I was old enough to go on my own, I used to go with a mate of mine, Frank Hume, who ended up one of the directors of BICC, the British Insulated Calendar Cables, and Frank and I used to go regular every Friday. It was a religion, more or less, to go every Friday. I was honoured to see the great Lou Thez in one year I was there, one time I was there. Those were the days when you had to get to Liverpool Stadium, you had to queue to get in. It was, I'm not sure how many seater, maybe 2,000 seater, and it was heaving every Friday night, it really was. Little knowing, of course, that in the years that followed I'd be in there refereeing some of the greats of my era,
Who were your favourites to watch, Mal, when you were going along to the stadium every Friday night?
A very, 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 very young Jimmy Breaks.
Yeah.
A fella called Ray Hunter.
Yeah.
He was everybody's favourite. Was very that sort of aura about him that appealed to a young guy. I want to be like Ray type thing, Probably Jeff Ports as well. He was a favourite of mine, and of course we all love to hate a baddie, and you can't get away in those days. Liverpool, everybody will tell you of my age, the Pye family. There was Dominic Pye, there was Jack Pye, who was uncle, there was Harry Pye. They were names that everybody knew, they were the great names of yesteryear. I think I only ever saw Jack appear once on TV, and that was he walked in and Kent Walton introduced him, but I never saw the match. They didn't show the actual match, So, but they were the type of names that I remember Jimmy Breaks as a young guy appearing there at one stage. I can't remember what year it was, but they were the days, They were the days.
So you mentioned, Mal, that you would go on to referee at the Liverpool Stadium. What was your first step into the world of wrestling? Was it considering becoming a wrestler yourself, or was it always with the view of becoming a referee?
Never considering being a wrestler. As you've probably heard through dressing room gossip, I tried it twice, and if there was ever a worse wrestler stepped in British rings, this both occasions at Chelsea Holiday Camp. If you would want to put down the worst you've ever seen, you can mention my name by all means. I was on with Scott Conway in one, and then a tag match in the other. I tagged with the great Johnny Kidd.
Yes.
Against two other great lads. Blondie Barrett was one. Can't remember who the other one was, but it was Shane Stevens.
Right.
Shane Stevens and Blondie against Johnny Kidd and I got the winning fall, believe it or not, with that grace. But, I tried that. I originally started MCing. I used to MC, but could diversify and referee as well. Some people said I was good. I suppose there are others that have their opinion of my refereeing abilities. But, I just enjoyed the business.
So how did it... So you were an MC first, was you, Mal?
Yeah, I wouldn't have lasted 50 years in the business if I didn't enjoy it,
Of course not.
Brian Dixon asked me to jump in as referee. I'd been seconding for Dales at Aldershot, Guildford and Camberley for a couple of years.
Right.
And then Brian took over one of the venues. I think it was Aldershot. Brian Dixon took over one of the venues, and I carried on doing seconding with him. With the caretaker of the hall, he was the owner of the hall. It was Aldershot, yeah. Caretaker of the hall at Aldershot. And I don't know, Brian Dixon then asked me would I can't remember if there was referee one night or MC, which I did. And dare I say, it got flavour for that. But nobody told me about the business in those days. For 4 months I refereed the business, thinking it was very straight indeed. Nobody told me. I changed in the corridors, I changed in the toilets, and not allowed in the dressing rooms. All as I was told was, if the shoulders are down, you count to 3, and if you don't get up, you count to 10. And that was the extent of my training for the business, you know.
So, geographically, Mel, you were born and grew up in Liverpool, is that correct?
Yeah, that's right, in Aintree, a 10-minute walk from Aintree Racecourse. And went to schools in Liverpool. I went to Sherbers Lane first, and then up to Walton Technical College. And then from there I left to join the Grand Everton Football Club as a trainee, as a, you know, whatever you call them, an apprentice, I think they're called nowadays, but they're called trainees. And I used to go, had a wonderful job painting the crush barriers. They used to be standing only at these grounds.
Yeah.
And they had crush barriers, painting them blue, and the edge of the steps white. I did that for, I think, 2 years. That was my training. I was lucky if I got a game of football of a Wednesday afternoon, you know. During that time, the PFA, Professional Football Association, had an agreement with the clubs. I don't know, I don't think we still will have now because of the finances involved, but I was on £1.17 and sixpence a week.
Wow.
So £1.85 a week. And to subsidise this, we were given, we had to do an apprenticeship somewhere, and my apprenticeship was with a company called Tyson's, who are large builders. They built the university in Liverpool, the John Moores University. My apprenticeship was as a chippy, as a carpenter, and spent a fair amount of the time doing the block flooring in Liverpool Cathedral, the parquet flooring in the Liverpool Anglican Cathedral. And then moving from there to near Honey's Green Lane, which was Everton's training ground. They then found me a job nearer because I was not able to drive in those days as a young 16-year-old kid, near Honey's Green Lane. It was a convent that was being converted, if that's the word, into a school for boys. And we ended up doing the block flooring in there with Tony, the guy that trained me, you know, with the parquet flooring.
So
I could walk there, from there at that place, I could walk to the training ground for after the morning session of training. I could then walk back to the convent and carry on with me apprenticeship training. Yeah.
So was it down in Aldershot that you first became involved in wrestling, as in you first got the opportunity to second?
With Brian, yeah. Aldershot, Camberley, and Guildford with Dales.
So what was it that moved you out of Liverpool, Mal?
Football.
Right.
Football. I got kicked out of everything. No, I got transferred. And, you know, went over to Wolves for a season and then down to Gillingham. Hence, here I am in Kent.
And how long has it been since you've settled in Kent, Mal?
I got moved here in 1962.
Nearly 60 years?
Yeah, in Kent.
Begin your seconding for Dales in the halls out in Surrey and Hampshire, and Brian Dixon takes over the hall there. When was it that became a regular thing for you in terms of being involved in wrestling and that becoming your...
More or less when Brian first got the contract for Butlins holiday camps. In those days there was 8 camps and 3 hotels.
Right.
Butlins hotels. And I put the rings in to every... Brian phoned me up and said, would you like some full-time work? Now, bearing in mind in those days, the summer season started at Easter and finished sometime in October.
Right.
You know, a long 26-week season. so would you like some full-time work? And I was working at that time, I think it was the time I was working in the printed circuit business, making printed circuit boards for an oceanographic equipment manufacturer. And I said, yeah, why not? I was fed up of going to work 9 to 5 type gimmick, you know, and what Brian offered me in those days was better than I was earning making printed circuit boards. You know, once again, the world of promises, which wrestling appears to be at times.
Yes.
Which it was, I can't knock it, you know. And he offered me, he doubled the wage what I was on. And I ended up working with a guy called Monty Swan. Monty Swan was renovating these rings. I was picking them up. I picked one up from Honeyboy Zimba's house. I picked one up from a fella called Mal Sample. There was eight rings, 8. And I had a car and a trailer.
Yep.
And I would go down, pick a ring up off Monty. He was doing them in a pub car park in Ellesmere Port. Pick up a ring, drive up to, say, Ayr in Scotland, drop the one off at Ayr. On the way back, call in at Mal Sample's farm, pick another one up, drop it off at Monty's place, you know. And I did all 8. I put the 8 rings into every Butlins holiday camp. Yeah.
Do you remember where those camps were, Mal? Because obviously today, the people listening may know there's only 3, Bogness, Skegness, Minehead.
Yeah, well, Brian then broke the tour down, the 8, into 2 sets of 4. I run the south, which the south consisted of Clacton, Bognor, Barry Island and Minehead.
Right.
And Roybal Davis, lovely Charlie, wonderful man. Roybal Davis, he ran the north with the team, and that was Ayr, Skegness, Filey and Pwllheli. Bearing in mind that I also had in the south 3 hotels. The one hotel was the Grand Hotel at Scarborough.
Yeah.
And then I had 2 hotels in the south that I had to do, but somebody had to bring a ring in for these. One was at Margate, St George's Hotel in Margate.
Yeah.
And the other one was the Ocean Hotel in Brighton.
I see.
Yeah, so, you know, I mean, we were doing quite a few shows a week. There was, you know, when you did Bognor, for example, you did Bracklesham Bay and Chelsea on the same day. So you'd probably do 3 shows a day, you know.
I see.
And the northern run, when I switched over with Charlie, you know, sometimes Charlie and I'd switch over, and you get the northern run. I can't remember what day it was, but you had 4 shows on one day. You know, you started off at silly o'clock at Reeton Sands. No, Primrose Valley, I beg your pardon. Primrose Valley. Then from Primrose Valley you'd go 1 o'clock at Filey, Butlins at Filey Holiday Camp. And then from there you go up to Warner's, all on the same road going up.
Yes.
You'd go to Warner's Holiday Camp on the left-hand side, heading through, and then 9 o'clock at night you do the Grand Hotel.
Busy times.
Oh, busy time, but you know, the money was good. You went on full wages in those days. The camps were not paying a lot to Brian, so you were on full money for your first camp and then half wages for your second and third, or second, third and fourth, or whatever, you know. So, but it was still good money in those days, you know.
And you were refereeing these shows, Mal, as well as overseeing them.
As well as overseeing and paying the wages. We used to, Friday night, wherever you were Friday, if you finished it, Friday night was everybody met at Liverpool Stadium. We met up with Brian at Liverpool Stadium on a Friday night, whether you come from Pwllheli or wherever you come from, whatever show you were doing. I can't remember the running order down south now.
Yeah.
But you met up with Brian at Liverpool Stadium. And Charlie would be there, and I'd be there with my team, or part of the team, maybe even changing the team, and you'd meet up there. I'd then get the money off Brian for the next week to pay the guys for the next week.
Yeah.
And then head north or south, whichever Brian's instructions were,
And what was Brian doing during this time, Mal? Was Brian running the town shows?
No, Brian had a tour of Devon and Cornwall. He had, I think it was 10 or 12 shows down in Devon and Cornwall. He was doing the Devon and Cornwall run. Town shows, these were town shows, I think he had one camp down there which we now know as Devon Cliffs.
Yes.
But it used to be called something else, I can't remember. And there were some camps down there. There was a couple at Torquay that he used to do, but mainly town shows. And Brian, I think Brian, it was a Penzance finish on a Friday, so the poor devil had to drive. I think his run was a 2-week run.
I see.
He'd be back up at Liverpool. His run finished doing something at Friday lunchtime, as far as I knew, and then he would drive from Penzance up to Liverpool, for the Liverpool Stadium show to meet up with us all.
Was you just working for Brian in this time, Mal, or was you working for other promoters also?
No, I was working for Brian totally during the summer. I had one season where I worked for Brian for 26 weeks. I took my caravan up to Reeton Sands.
Yeah.
And I completely did the whole of that northern area for 26 weeks. All along there, and Brian would send, there was myself and a fella called John Riley, as Riley's son. I had Andre Baker with me for 2 weeks, had Billy Stock with me for 6 weeks, and then John Riley for the rest of the time. I took my caravan up there, and the caravan was at Reeton Sands, and then we were doing all the shows using my caravan. It was a large caravan, it was quite a reasonable sized one, and park it there and then go out. I had a van with a ring in it.
Yes.
And we'd go out doing the shows, for the week. And that was 26 weeks. I think I went home once or twice during those 26 weeks. And I know my wife came up with the children to me at one stage for a couple of weeks holiday in the area, But that's the way it was, And then, as you say, working for somebody else, I worked for Jack Pallow.
Yep.
Jack had his own promotions. Neil Evans, he had his own promotions. John Fremantle, of course. John has more or less always been around. So, you work for other people. I wasn't exclusive for Brian, but I did try to give Brian priority, but sometimes it was don't hold your breath waiting for the phone call type thing, And if something else come up, then you'd have to take it,
Definitely. Now, Mal, this is on the subject of the holiday camps. You were still active on them as of last year, so you've been involved up until very recently. How important would you say the holiday camps are to a wrestler?
To a wrestler? Oh, immensely. Immensely. 2 things. One, I repeat words of Johnny Kincaid to you.
Yep.
If done right, since the going of Saturday afternoon television, if the camps are done right, it is the biggest shop window for British wrestling in the country.
Yes.
If it's done right. And I remember John saying to me that John was on the camps with me at one stage, and he said, you know what, we work in front of like 3,000 people at Skegness. He said if 10% of these people like what they see, when they get home to their hovel, to their own homes, and they say, oh, there's Johnny Kincaid, or there's Max Rager or whoever was on the show, you know, oh, look, he's on that poster, that's the guy we saw at Butlins, or that's the guy we saw at Pontins, or whatever, yeah?
Yeah.
And they go to the show. 10% of those people, I remember John worked it out somewhere in the region that we were working in front of about 1.5 million people during the course of the summer. And if you worked out on a theory that 10% liked enough just to go once to a show at the, once they got home, then that would be a hell of a lot of revenue coming into the wrestling business.
And it makes it better for everyone.
Listen, I always say, and I'll say it now openly, I love to see a promoter making money, because if a promoter makes money, he's a very happy bunny. If he's a happy bunny, he'll run more shows. If he runs more shows, that's more work for the lads.
Definitely.
It's simple logic, you know.
So, Mel, you were heavily involved with Brian Dixon. Was this leading into the time when he got his TV slot, or as part of ITV's coverage of World of Sport?
Yes, I was with him. I did, I think, 4 or 5 of them, yeah.
What was the first TV show that you'd done, Mel?
The first one I ever did was Rollerball Rocco versus Fuji Yamada at Lewisham Theatre, a championship match, world championship match. I'd done the one at Croydon that was not televised, where Yamada got the strap, and then I did the television one, and this is on YouTube.
Yeah.
I did the television one, Yamada versus Mark, where Mark got the strap. That was the very first one I did. And then I did Rollerball Rocco and Wayne Bridge versus Shane Stevens and Kendo Nagasaki. I also did Dave Finlay versus Super Sandy Scott. That's an education, that one. And then I did Dave Finlay versus Danny Boy Collins. And then I did an Alan Kilby, I think it was versus Quango, was that one. And it was that. And then, of course, Brian also had satellite television from Stoke Garden Festival.
Okay.
Yeah, that was on there. Mark was on it. Pat Barrett was on it. I've just been watching one, Neil Sands versus Big Bill Bromley. I refereed that. Also on the same bill was Tony Sinclair versus Mal Kirk. I refereed that. There was a tag match with Blondie Barrett and Bobby Barnes. I forget who they were on against, probably Johnny Kidd and somebody. And Pat Barrett and Crusher, I think it was, or was it Rocco and Crusher? I can't remember. But yeah, we used to go to this massive big striped tent, and it was filmed for satellite television. With the commentator was Maxton G. Beasley, who showed up on the recent ITV World of Sport revival.
Yes.
Haven't seen him since. I hadn't seen him days of filming at Stoke, and then his name was mentioned. I think he did a few words as well, backstage wording on the new revival. Yeah.
Another thing, you were also well known for was going overseas to take part in the German tournaments. How did that first come about for you?
When I do my talks at various wrestling schools, one of my statements that I always say to wrestlers or up-and-coming wrestlers is, whatever you want in the wrestling business, you must go to it. It will not come to you.
No.
Now, those were words that were given to me by one of the best wrestlers this country has ever produced, and that was a fella called John Cortez.
Yes.
John was absolute master. And John Cortez said, if you want anything, Mal, you have to go and get it yourself, pal. It's not going to come to you. So I said that. So I decided that I would get in my caravanette and drive out to Germany, meet up with Dave and Paula out there, Dave Finlay and Paula.
Yes.
And went up to Pete Williams and said, "Hi, I'm Mal Mason, referee from Great Britain. If you have a specialist match at the weekend, I'd like to referee it. I don't pay it. I just want you to look at me." And as it happened, Rocco was coming in that weekend with and on against a fella called Steve Wright, who's a very good wrestler. Very
German wrestler, yes.
Well,
He's a British wrestler that moved for Germany.
But he lived in Germany, yeah.
Right.
He was something else, Steve Wright, he really was. And his brother Bernie as well, Bernie Wright.
Yes.
Worked with him in Hamburg. Anyway, there was that. Peter said, "Right, if you'd like to do that, you can do." So, as I went from there, I spent a few days with Dave and Paula. They showed me around Hanover and the lake and everything, very nice. And Cannonball as well. They very cleverly took me on the fairground and got me pissed on glue vine and stuck me on the bloody Mary Rose that just went up and down, up and down. Well, I was sick. I wasn't very well, to say the least. Anyway, as only family could. Anyway, the next thing, I drove over to Hamburg, and did the same thing to Rennie Laslates. I said, "Hi, Rennie Laslates, I'm Mal Mason, British referee.
Yes.
If you've got a specialist match or a championship match at the weekend, I'm doing Saturday night for Peter down in Hanover.
Yeah.
But if you've got something on Sunday, I don't want paying. I just want you to look at me." And I was lucky. I was so lucky. The main event that they were flashing that Sunday night was Drew McDonald, wrestler, villain, versus Johnny Kincaid, boxer, face.
Right.
Yeah? A match that I've been refereeing around the country, around Great Britain for 3 months.
Yes.
So I knew where to be for the sucker punch. I knew what was going on. I knew everything. So, of course, when I get this sucker punch and do a bloody near somersault from it and take a bump on it and boom, 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 and so on. Rennie Laslates, well, the top and bottom line, I got 10 years' work out of it. At the, doing the tournaments. He said, "I can't use you this year, but next year." And then he phoned me up the following May or June, and he says, "Look, what we're going to do," he says, the way we're going to introduce you to the tournaments, he said, "we're going to get all the British wrestlers, they're fed up of this German referee and the French referee and the German referee siding with all the German wrestlers. The British wrestlers are Steve Regal, Robbie Brookside, Drew, and so on. They were all going to have a sit-in the middle of the ring and demand a British referee. So in 2 weeks after the tournament started, you're going to come in as the new referee, British referee." And that's how I was introduced. That's how I, was introduced into the German shows.
For those listening now that might not know how the German tournament works, what was the whole setup of it? Was you doing these shows from one tent?
Oh, yes. It was about a 3,000-seater tent, I think, so something like that. I can't remember now. Or was that? No, that was, I think Hanover was a 3,000, Hamburg was half the size. But anyway, the way it worked was you had maybe 20 wrestlers on the job and 2 referees. Okay, now you'd only get maybe, if you had a tag match, you had 4 matches every night. If you had a tag match, that would be 10 wrestlers working. The other wrestlers that were not working, it was their job to go into the bar at the interval and sign the magazines.
Right.
Okay, but of course that alternated every night because everybody was. It was like a tongue-tied situation where everybody was on against everybody else. In Hanover, they had a big scoreboard outside with the names across the top and the names down the side. 2 points for a win, 1 point for a draw. I think there was -1 for a DQ, disqualification, and so on. And then there'd be a total at the end, you know, and you'd get your champion. Your champion at the end of the tournament. So that's basically how it worked. As a referee, I worked for a few years with a fella called Heinz Geib, Flying Geib. He really was a flyer, that guy. He'd fly after ropes and everything. He was very good. Heinz Geib. And then the second time I worked with a fella called Michel Bernard, who was very good. He taught the police unarmed combat. He was a tasty little man. But he also liked the taste of whiskey. Should we say? I won't say any more than that. But, there are times when he did turn up at the shows, having tasted the whiskey, put it that way. So what you would do is on the Monday night you'd work match 1, 3, and 5, and the next and your opposite referee would work match 2 and 4 or whatever, and then the next night you'd work 2 and 4, and he'd do 1, 3, and 5. You know what I mean? Or you do 2 and 4, he'd do 1 and 3. You know, so you worked half the night with about 8 times more money than you got in England.
Mel, how long would the tournaments last for? How long would you be out in Germany for?
Each tournament lasted about 6 to 8 weeks. Germany ones, I only did the Hamburg ones. I did others on short notice. You know, I went out to Austria for a week. But the Hamburg one was always 6 weeks. It was 42 nights.
Wow.
And you worked every night.
And what was the arrangement with your living, Mal? Where would you be living out there?
Well, you take your caravan, drive your caravan out there, you put your caravan up against the back of the tent. So
it's like the circus?
Pardon?
It's like the circus?
No, it's not like a circus tent, no. It's a long long building with an apex roof, with a, you know.
Right.
A top roof, like you would see a row of terraced houses.
Yes.
Yeah, with that type of roof, you know, and it would be long. There would be a caravan in the front, which would be the casa, where they would inside the tent, but there would be a hole in the tent wall where they would take the money, and inside the tent also was like these. Like an old railway carriage, but they were actually building site units. They were on wheels. One was the toilets.
Yeah.
And the other one was a shower room that we had, and the other one was our changing room. I think 2 together was the changing room, and we'd all change in that area there, you know.
I see.
But your caravans were all parked up at the back of the tent. If I remember the last time I was there, Dave Duke had a motorhome, a little high-ace motorhome, and then there was me on the end with mine. Then next to me was Johnny South. I can't. Chris Eckstein, was there with his caravan. The guy, he does King Kendo.
Dale Preston.
Dale Broughton, yeah, his caravan was there, and you know, we all line up at the back of the tent, throwing he had electric. He threw your cable in, you know, into the tent where the generator was. There was a petrol or diesel driven generator that, you know, that was on the size of a large trailer, and you had all these plugs in it, and you just find yourself a plug and get your power, you know, which you were charged for through the nose, I might add. But, there you go. It was basically. I remember saying to Danny Collins when we were in Austria, Danny's good lady was from a very well-to-do family. I said, I wonder what Tracy's mum and dad would think about her living like a bloody gypsy. see for 6 months of the year, you know. But, that's the way it was. That's the way. Thoroughly enjoyable time, you know.
Now, Mel, you said you've been involved in the wrestling for over 50 years.
Well, 50 years this coming September. This September the 22nd of this year, I will have been with the wrestling business, starting from the second in with Dales for 50 years, 2 years with Dales, then 48 years basically with Brian.
Yes.
But filling in gaps from Brian when Brian didn't use me or hadn't got the shows or whatever. With Brian for 48 years, yeah, and right up till 2 hours ago when I spoke to him on the phone, we've been friends and work associates for that period of time, you know.
You're predominantly known, Mel, for being a referee, and of all the matches you've refereed, what match or matches stand out in your mind most as some of the best you've been in the ring with?
Easiest question of all that you've asked me today. There was a match I refereed, and I believe it was at Leeds. Is it Town Hall or City Hall? It's a 1,700 seater, and it was heaving. And it was a match between Eddie Hemmel, who at that time was called Kung Fu,
Yes.
against a fella called Johnny Palance.
Right.
Now, he was the son of a wrestler, somebody called Mann, M-A-N-N. I believe that was his dad. I don't take that as written, but I think he was the son of a wrestler. A very hard man, John, very tough guy, and so was Eddie. Eddie was as well, but in those days, it was in my youth, reasonably a lot younger than I am now, and they went at it for 6 rounds maybe, and I come out of that ring and I was blowing out of every bloody orifice in my body. But by God, what a match. What a match. And that stands out right as the highlight of my career, to have the honour to have refereed that match. But in saying that, a lot of people have said to me, and you may have said it to me yourself, Josh, when I've refereed, how do you think the match went? And when I'm in there refereeing, it's very difficult to see how the match goes because you're too busy concentrating on your job.
Yes.
You know? When I'm MC and I'm sitting at the ringside and watching the match, yeah, ask me then. I'll tell you, because I'm watching, I'm outside looking in. But when you're there in the mix, it's difficult. You know, and you said any other matches, yes. Although we had our words many times, and that was Skellet and I, we did not see eye to eye, and I only found out of recent years why, what he got against me.
Are you able to share that with us, Mel?
Because the member of the forces that I was in treated him bad when he was in the army. Not me, but my forebearers apparently treated him a bit rough when he was doing a bit of sorry, no, I don't want to commit myself, but let's say Les was probably a naughty boy in the army, and visited a place called Colchester a little bit too often, and even when I used to go to Colchester to take prisoners to Colchester, I can assure you the guys there that run that place were bloody animals, because they even treated me the same as they would have treated Les, and I was one of them.
Yeah.
You know, so he didn't like me, and that was Eddie Hemmel that told me that was the reason why he didn't like me. But in saying that, one of the men I had the most respect for was Les Kelly, believe it or not.
Right.
You know, that guy could get in the ring and just have the audience eating out of his hand. The guy who I admire the most of all in the business, who I've worked with many times, I've stayed with him many times, is Jimmy Briggs.
Yes.
Oh, I don't know if you've seen any of the matches of Jimmy Briggs, but when I was refereeing, Klondike Kate will also tell you this, we lived through very violent times in the refereeing business, in the wrestling business, sorry. We lived through violent times. One referee, Roger Brown, he got 7 bells kicked out of him at one show.
What was that for?
A wrong decision, making the wrong decision, basically.
Right.
You know, making the wrong decision, basically, or not seeing what the villain had done.
Yes.
And their hero losing the match. And so on. He got out the ring, and that was a Bat Pavilion, and the punters had him. And I was MC that night, and, you know. But Jimmy, going back to Jimmy Briggs, you stand in the ring with Jim, he'd be on with, say, somebody like Johnny Saint, who I've refereed him and John many times.
Yeah.
He'd be in there with Johnny Saint, he'd be doing some evil things to John. And if you'd given a knife to a punter, they would willingly stick it in Jimmy Briggs. However, when it was time for Jimmy to get out the ring, he might have gone over, and he might have gone over dodgy, or whatever. But when it was time for Jimmy to walk up that aisle, they were patting him on the back saying, good old Jim, good old Jim. You know, working on the theory that Jack Pallow said, never bring him up if you can't bring him down. And Jimmy could bring them up. But by God, when he was ready to walk back down that aisle, he knew how to bring the punters down again, you know. Another story that you may be interested in, and Kincaid can bear me out on this.
Yes.
We were at the Corner Exchange in Bedford one night.
Yeah.
And it was Johnny Kincaid and Dave Bond, the Caribbean Sunshine Boys.
Yes.
And I've got a feeling it was Ben and Mark, King Ben and Kid McCoy they were on against. And we went out the ring and they're fighting down the ring, and I'm standing next to John watching the back, like, you know, watching his back. And the Rastafarian come up to John, pulled out an 18-inch machete.
Wow.
Handed it to John and said, give him some of this. John Kincaid put both his hands up and went, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Backed off.
Time to get back in the ring, lads.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, yes, Kincaid, if you see him, there's the Rastafarian fervor. So it was a violent time, you know. I mean, Jane got done in there. A young Wendy Mills, she worked for Spitfire. She got done at Liverpool Stadium, got badly beaten up, the young kid. She was only a young girl. I think she married Tony Scarlow's son, Dino.
Right.
Yeah, she got badly beaten up in Liverpool. And of course, she didn't do Liverpool Stadium. There was a tunnel, and you went right down this tunnel to the dressing rooms. The dressing rooms were way down the bottom under. Of course, by the time the boys, it was a massive stadium.
Yes.
And it was circular. And by the time Jane got like three rows up the aisle, they had Klondike, you know, they were doing it. And by the time the boys come out, the poor girl had got bloody 7 bells kicked out of her, you know.
Yeah.
And it was a violent time, and some of the halls were they certainly, they were not on the Christmas card list. Norwich was one, Liverpool Stadium was the other, and Plymouth was the other. And you go down there, and if you had a suit of armour, you put it on, type of thing, you know. Funny enough, been in the ring. I've been in foreign countries in the ring, and I've disqualified their baby faces from the country I've been in. But the only time I was really frightened was the Saturday after John Quinn had been on the television. I don't know if you've seen the film of it, where he said, "All Englishmen are cowards."
No, I've not seen that.
No, he said you could. He did a speech similar on the lines of you can always rely on the English. You can always rely on them in the battle. You know, you can always rely on them to get off and run like hell away from it. You know, and all Englishmen are cowards. That was on the Saturday. That came out on the television. I think it was filmed a few months before, but it came out on the television on the Saturday. On the Tuesday night, I was refereeing John at Plymouth against the guy who was the manager of Yate Tesco. He was, I can't remember, Martinelli.
Right.
Yeah, he was on with him. And John Quinn come out that dressing room and the crowd erupted. It just went off. And he hadn't even been in the ring, you know. And it really, and I was really frightened that night. It's the only time I have been frightened. And in Beirut, when they all got the guns out and started shooting it up in the air, when I was standing in the ring with Danny Lynch. That didn't worry me. Danny said, you know, the only thing that worried me, they were shooting the bullets up in the air. And I said, bloody hell, Danny. He said, don't worry, lad. When they point the gun at you, that's when you worry. I said, I'm not worried, Danny. I said, they're shooting up in the air. What goes up's got to come down. I said, well, they're coming down at 127 mile an hour. It's just as violent as it going in at bloody 1,500 mile an hour, you know.
Definitely.
But, yeah.
You mentioned some notorious halls there, Mel. Which halls have been your favourite to work in?
The favourite of them all ever was a Southampton pier before it was classified as dangerous. The pier was classified as collapse. I used to love going there. I used to like the Johnson Hall at Yeovil until they decided to put us on the stage. We were then too far away from the audience, because you've worked on stages yourself. You've done Basildon for one, but at least the audience are there. With the Johnson Hall Yeovil, you had the ring on the stage, and then you had an orchestra pit of about 10 foot wide. You know, so you were just too far away. So when it became that, but Johnson Hall Yeovil used to like doing. I used to like Oxford Town Hall as well. That was a nice place to do, you know. Lots of, and all these halls, you know, each hall you always something there you could tell a story about. The Oxford Town Hall, the nice, I don't know, television, I think it was, and the producer or the director stood on the stage. I was MC, and he stood on the stage, and he told me that he would cue me when it was time to go, you know, when it was time to, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. He stood with his hip on this, a hand on his hip, and saw the bent arm pointing at me saying, cue you, sweetie. Well, you can imagine the stick I got after that, from that every time I saw the lads, you know, hello, sweetie. But there's lots of different halls you go to, stories about, you know.
So, Mel, you started the British Wrestlers Reunion, which still runs to this day.
I did, yeah.
Where did the idea of it come from? What made you want to start that?
Well, no, if in all honesty, and I say this every time I'm approached on this subject, in all honesty, if any credit should go Wrestlers Reunion, the credit should go to Cat Weasel's wife. Right. When Gary died, I think his wife's name was Annette. I can't remember now. I was transport for Gary for 2 years. Gary was epileptic, so he couldn't drive.
Right.
I used to pick him up. And of course, I got to know his wife, his family, his daughter, who has just recently passed on, as you may know.
Yeah.
And I was standing talking to Gary left £1,000 for the boys to have a few beers after he passed on,
right.
After the funeral. And we were all in this pub. It was the pool room, and they put boards on the tables, and the food was all laid out on the tables. And we stood round in groups, and I stood talking to Johnny Quango and Mick McManus.
Yeah.
And Annette come up to us and joined us and was talking to us. I'm sure her name was Annette. Can't remember. But anyway, and she says, "Isn't it a shame, Mal? Look at the boys. Look around." She says, "The only time the guys get together is when somebody dies. Look at them all chatting and enjoying themselves. No punters breathing down their necks, and so on and so on. You can, villains like, well, I stood with Johnny Quango and Mick, who have probably battled each other 1,000 times in the punters' eyes.
Yes.
But we were standing there having a beer and so on, and, referees, I would more or less always travel on my own to shows, not mixing with the wrestlers and so on. So, it was nice to be able to get to shows. It was nice. Sorry, it sounds bad, doesn't it? Get to funerals where you can meet up with the guys or not have to worry about the public,
Yeah. And
it was there if anybody. And I just said, and I think it was Mick. It was Mick that said to me, "You're the organiser, Mal. Get up." So I did, and had the first one in my garden. I spoke to Tony Scarlow about it. And he said, because I didn't know all the Dale guys. I didn't have a phone number for the Dales guys. I only had all the guys who had come over to Brian, like Jack Pallow, Ricky Starr, Les Keller, Adrian Street, and so on and so on. I had all their numbers. But I didn't have the Dales guys, the Bernard Murray and Pensacough and Shirley, of course, and the guys that were still over with Dales at the time prior to moving to Brian. Probably Mark as well. Probably Mark Rocco was still with Brian, possibly, I don't know. But Tony Scarlow pulled in the Dales guys, and I pulled in the English guys, the Brian guys, as you might say.
Yeah.
And we had the first one in my garden, and 25 turned up.
Wow.
25, yeah. Johnny Quango was there, Dave Bond, Pat Roach, Tony Scarlow, of course. I can't remember. Tug Holton, Tommy Holton, Bob Kirkwood. It's when I had I don't know, did you ever come to my place when I had the big house?
I don't think I ever have been, Mal, no.
No, okay, no. Give you some idea, the garden that I had 34 cars parked in on my 40th birthday party.
Wow.
So, there's plenty of room to hold a reunion there.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I got a photo on my phone, or if not on my phone, it's on my laptop here, of the guys were assembled together. Okay, Hines, he was another one. Brian Minnelli, he was another one. Steve Minnelli's dad.
Yeah.
And he was another one that was there. Dave Bond, Johnny Quango, Pat Roach. And funny enough, Dave Bond and Pat Roach are not on the photo. They were in my kitchen. I remember that, cooking fish. So they weren't there. But that's how it basically started. And then we sort of pulled in Joe Durazio from somewhere. I don't know. Tony pulled him in.
Yeah.
And people were complaining that it was too far to drive down to me in Kent. And the next time it was taken to Joe Cornelius's pub in Crantock Street. I don't know if you know where that is. If you stand at Marble Arch with you and look down Edgware Road.
Yes.
I believe it's the second one on the right going down there. So
I see.
You can imagine, because the pub was called Crantock, you can imagine what the parking was like.
Yes, I certainly can.
Certainly left a bit to be desired.
Yes.
So it lasted there just for the one show. It then moved to Bill Bridges' pub, William, I think it's called the Prince of Orange, or William of Orange. Excuse me. That was on the forecourt of the Greenwich railway station.
I see.
Right on the corner by the station. Parking was at a premium, I know, even on a Sunday. You have to pay the parking meters. So I think everybody was rather pleased when it moved to the Bridges, where it is now in South Darren.
Yes.
The only thing that I stopped going because two reasons I stopped my involvement was the awards.
Yeah.
They talked about giving awards out, and I believe they still do it to this day.
Yeah.
And my argument was, why should we give, I'll use you as an example, why should we give Josh Faulkner one when we're not giving why not Sid Manser?
Oh, because Sid Manser can fuck himself now. He'll listen to that and he'll like that.
Yeah, but do you know what I mean? It's, why should you give Brian Manelli one, Brian Maxine a list and not Kincaid?
Yeah.
Give Johnny Saint one and not Stevie Gray, and so on and so on, and then it started getting ridiculous that they were giving them for guys who died. Who was the guy that was in the wheelchair?
Right.
Bert Azarati, and his wife come to receive it. I think her name was Marjorie, I can't remember. But she came to receive it, so I think Pat had to grab the microphone off her in the end. She kept on
no.
The speech and so on, giving a history of what her husband had done and where he'd been in the world and who he'd beaten and who he hadn't and who, and I thought, well, that's a good enough reason.
Yeah.
Dare I rest my case about giving awards out, that was one reason. And the second reason was the last time I went, Tony Scarlow and I said to Tony, just go round and count how many wrestlers are here. He came back and I went off and started counting as well. And he counted 47 wrestlers, I counted 49.
Right.
But he had not counted me and him.
Okay.
And then when we used to have newsletters come out, and when the newsletters come out, 300 people had attended the reunion.
So you had 250 punters.
250 punters. And, there's a photograph that I've got in my file here on my computer of Mick McManus and I hiding behind a bloody door to get out the way of them, because the problems that I had, Mal Sanders and Stevie Gray, we were still working in those days. The likes of Colin Johnson and so on, they were the past.
Yeah.
So the punters that were there were the regular recent punters. So they knew me. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you were getting your bloody sleeve pulled. Mal, is that Mick McManus over there? Can you give me an introduction to him? And, just getting bloody fed up with it. Sorry about my cough, this bloody...
No, it's understandable, Mal. Don't be silly.
You just got to be a bloody pain in the arse. So I just said, oh, that's it. I ain't going anymore. And it's nice, so nice to go to the Northern reunion. That it's all boys in there. It's all the boys in there. You can go and talk and you're not pestered. And it's nice to see your friends and to be able to talk to the Eddie Hemmels and the Johnny Saints and the Colin Johnsons and the Tony Sinclairs and the Dave Taylors, Boston Blackie, etc., etc., etc. It's nice to go up there and talk to these guys and not have somebody breathing down your bloody neck. Mal, can you introduce me to that? Mal, is that Joe Bloggs? No, it's so nice.
Moving on here, Mal. So your name is always mentioned when you're talking about the best referees to come out of England. What, in your opinion, makes a good referee?
Being in the wrong place at the right time and not forgetting your status. You're there to make the bloody number of full stop. You see, wrestlers, their names are in the programme. Their photographs and names are on the posters. They're the ones the punters come to see.
Yes.
They don't come to see the referee. They come to see the wrestlers. Never forget that they're the stars. You've still got a job to do, but don't try it. There was one particular referee. He used to put himself out. I mean, you probably noticed I'm not degraded anybody by name on here.
Yes.
And I wouldn't do that. I try not to do that. But there was one referee in my era, and I'll call him James Mason's friend, for want of another word, for want of a description without mentioning him. And he was a pain in the arse. I remember Finlay slapping him on the back one day. And I thought, if it had been me, he'd have gone. Finlay had gone right through me, you know. He slapped bloody hard through, putting himself over and being in the way. You know, he really was something else, this referee. And there's another story as well, foreign referee. I remember that first I told you about doing the Rocco and Steve Wright match in Hanover.
Yes.
That first year I went out there, and I was watching the show. I was trying to watch how the format was of the show, you know. And I stood with Dave Taylor and Dave Finlay at the back of the hall. There was a place at the back where the wrestlers could come out the dressing room unseen and watch what was going on in the ring.
Yeah.
And I stood with them two and watched the referee. I think he was the senior referee there. He wasn't English. He was foreign. I'm not going to mention names. And I just looked at this guy and I thought, bloody hell, I give up refereeing. This guy, I was in awe of him.
Right.
I thought, wow, look at this guy. And Finlay says, and I said that to Finlay. And Dave Finlay says to me, he's fucking useless. I don't think he swore. I don't think Dave swore. But he said he's useless. He said, watch him. He's too busy trying to put himself over. Now, looking at it from that aspect, yeah, that's all he was doing, was putting himself over. But in doing it, he looked good doing it. Put it that way, you know. But as a referee, be in the wrong place at the right time, and I have so much respect for wrestlers. I really have. I've done it myself. No, I'll rephrase that. I've tried to do it myself. I've tried to do it myself. And I have so much respect that you can throw a punch at somebody. I won't enlarge on that for other reasons, but, you know, you can throw a punch.
Definitely.
And it's a powder puff effect elsewhere, put it that way. You know, so much respect. So much respect that you can come off the top rope, you know, that bloody suplex off the top rope thing.
Yeah.
How the hell you get up if that had been me? I'd have bloody stay down there and die, you know. No, I have so much. Every wrestler, it doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter who they are. I have so much respect for these guys that day after day after day, they throw themselves about, yourself included, Josh. You're one of the better ones of the newer brace.
That's very kind of you to say, Mel.
Not at all, not at all. You know, and so much respect for all of you, you know, and the younger generation coming up. The only sad part about today's business is, I'll ask you a question, Josh.
Yeah.
When you see the poster outside of the building or around the town, what's the top line across, what's the top word across the top of it?
Well, it should be wrestling.
That's right. Not acrobatics, not gymnastics, wrestling.
Yes.
And you know, I watched some kids doing this, and I think ask them to do a short arm scissors and roll their opponent, and they probably want to go to Chandler's to buy a pair of fucking scissors. Sorry.
No, by all means. There's a no rating on this.
Sorry. Yeah, but do you know what I mean?
It's funny you say that, Mal, because my next question to you is, you mentioned earlier that you go to wrestling schools and you do talks, or you're speaking to younger wrestlers at the shows. For those of you that haven't had the opportunity to speak to you, what advice can you pass on to the younger generation of wrestlers, or not so much the younger, but the up-and-coming wrestlers of today?
The up-and-coming wrestlers of today, I always say, abide by 4 rules. There are 4 rules to abide by. Rule 1, get to the show at the prescribed time.
Yeah.
On time. You know, you may be asked to go to a show at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because they're doing the filming, and they might be filming the incidentals in the afternoon.
Yeah.
That pertain to the show overnight. So, get to the show at the prescribed time.
Yeah.
Rule number 2, do as you're told without question. So if a promoter comes up to you and says, I want you to go down to a guy you know damn well is 10 times worse than you are,
Yep.
do as you're bloody told, because
Yep.
the promoter has a reason for doing this.
Yep.
He has a reason for it. So do as you're told without question. Rule number 3, hold your hand out. Rule number 4, fuck off home.
Yep.
So, get to the show on time, do as you're told, without question, hold your hand out to get paid, go home. It's that simple. It is that simple.
I couldn't agree more with you there, Mel.
That's how simple the business is, if it's done right.
Yeah.
You know, I remember Rollerball saying to me many years ago, whatever is done in this business, if it's done right, it will have impact.
Definitely.
If it's done wrong, you just look a prick.
Yeah.
Well, I think Mark used the word fool. You'll just look a fool. You know, and there were so many guys that wanted to emulate Rocco and failed miserably because he was something else during his era in the business, you know?
I know what you mean, Mel.
He certainly was something else. He was ahead of his time, without any shadow of doubt.
Yeah.
And it's just a shame that Mark is where he is, and I just hope, I'm hoping beyond hope, that there is some way of recovery for the guy, because, you know, I refereed Mark, God, I don't know, 100 times, you know, and, yeah, just wish him well, and his lovely wife, yeah.
So, Mel, you no longer referee, unfortunately. So what roles do you currently do within wrestling?
Nothing really. I've been made, for want of another word, commissioner for 2 companies.
Yes.
One is for Rumble Promotions, the other one is for Hearts of Essex Wrestling.
Yep.
Both companies I like working for.
Yep.
I love working for both companies. I enjoy working for Rumble. Absolutely no pressure whatsoever working for that company. It's a nice, easy-going company. Steve Barker, the promoter, well thought out shows.
Yep.
He does give his shows some thought. You know, he does give his shows some thought. And the same with Sam Nee. Sam Nee will phone me up and say, what do you think of this, Mal? What do you think if we do this? What do you think if we do? And, you know, I try to offer him some advice. Advice is very easy to give and very hard to take.
Yes.
But, you know, at least the guy is giving his forthcoming show some thought. There's a difference between being a promoter and running a show.
No, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like Brian Dixon, Steve Barker, they're promoters, you know?
Yeah.
Other people who I won't name run shows. Totally different perspective.
Yes.
You know,
So Mal, in closing here, what's your plans for the future?
Staying alive. I had no idea. With having this terminal cancer, this bone cancer that I have got, September 2019, I was given 18 months to live. So the immediate answer to that question is bloody staying alive, mate. And while I can still be involved in the wrestling business, still keep my hand in or whatever, doing bits that I can for people, and most of all, if I can offer advice to people, my phone's an open phone for anybody that wants to call me.
Mal, I'm sure I speak on behalf of a load of people when I say that we hope we keep having you around the shows. You're of that generation that I personally feel needs to be kept strong within British wrestling.
Yeah, it would appear that the NXT is looking at it in that way as well, because of giving the position to Johnny Saint,
Yes.
God, you couldn't have given it to a better guy, could you? You know what I mean? And it's nice to see Marty Jones involved with the wrestling. Marty is he won't get a much better trainer than Marty.
No.
And of course Ricky Knight. God, Ricky eats, sleeps, and drinks wrestling.
Yes.
And I just feel so sorry for Ricky at this precise moment because of his dreaded COVID-19, that it's crippling Ricky, not only financially but mentally, and I do feel sorry for him. And just hope a speedy return to the business for everybody, of course, for everybody. And everybody, hey, out there, all of you, stay safe. I want to see you again.
No, I'm sure they'll be thinking the same about you, Mal. Thanks you once again for taking the time to come on and talk, Mal. I really do appreciate it. Many thanks once again to Mal Mason for taking the time to come and talk his near 50 years in professional wrestling. That's quite the achievement. If you've enjoyed this week's show and wish to reach out to us on social media with either praise, feedback, suggestions, you can find us firstly on the Twitter at Josh T. Faulkner, Instagram, The Josh Faulkner, and Facebook, Josh Faulkner Comedy. My guest next week is a hybrid of the old school and the new school. None other than the Phoenix himself, Jody Fleisch. Until then, it's goodbye from me.